But I want to welcome you all to the third of our webinar series. This one is on making sure your message stays in front of your legislator. So we're going to do this time a really quick poll. Eden, could you pull up the first poll, the one on whether or not you attended the webinar before? Okay, if everyone could just take a moment to fill this out. We're just trying to get an idea of who's on this webinar, if we've got a lot of new folks or people who have been attending the other sessions. And we're going to give it just, oh, we got everybody responding to this. It looks like.
So we do have a bunch of people,
Right.
This is their first webinar, so.
Yes, all right, so thank you everyone. And so we're going to go ahead and do introductions. I am Joan Patterson, and actually, guys, I got to tell you, seeing myself on screen is just, it's tough. I'm Joan Patterson, and I am a member of various friends groups and been on a number of friend boards. And one of the reasons advocacy is so important to me is when we lived in Oregon, we were part of the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge. We had to work in order to get the necessary federal funding to open up that refuge, which is now considered an urban refuge. And it was the Refuge Association that really provided our friends group with the advice that we needed in order to be successful. So, and then I was lucky enough, hey, when we moved to Northern Virginia, to be able to be working for the Refuge Association as their director of grassroots outreach. I'd like to now turn it over to Caroline. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Caroline Brower, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Wildlife Refuge Association. And I have been at the Refuge Association for about 5.5 years now. Before I came to the Refuge Association, I worked for Ducks Unlimited, and I started there in 2008. And I was working on Fish and Wildlife Service issues, and I got to know the refuge system through that job as well. I had been, I grew up in South Carolina on the coast in Charleston, and I grew up going to the Cape Remain National Wildlife Refuge and the East Basin National Wildlife Refuge when I was a kid, never knowing that they were national wildlife refuges. And it wasn't until I started working for Ducks Unlimited when I was 30 that I realized that these places are actually wildlife refuges. So yeah, so that's, I work on a lot of appropriations issues. I'm a one-woman shop for the Refuge Association doing government affairs work. So anything that happens for refuges with policy on Capitol Hill in the administration, I work on it, and I'm also working with friends as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Thanks, Carol.
Yep.
So today we're going to be reviewing some of the content from our previous webinars, but we're primarily going to focus on what happens after your meeting with the members of Congress or their staff. It's the work outside of that meeting that's really important, because that's your relationship with your lawmaker, and that you can have more influence on the decisions that they make with regards to refuges. So let me just get this screen moving forward. We've done the poll, done presenters. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to be talking about advocacy, because it's all about the relationship. And we're going to be talking about too, the period after your meeting. You really want to focus on how you can strengthen the relationships that you have. Remember, advocacy is a long-term deal. Once we get through with those three topics, then Caroline's going to give you an update on the various legislative issues, and then we've built in some time here for wrap-up and questions. So we talk about advocacy as a relation, it's about relationships. And we want to focus in on why do these relationships matter? And who do we want to cultivate these relationships with? And these relationships can take very many different forms. So, why do the relationships matter? Well, as fellow folk from Massachusetts, O'Neill once said, who was Speaker of the House from 1977 to 1987, all politics is local. And what he means by local, he means really local. It's about the relationships. That's how the deals were getting done. I had the opportunity one time to sit down with Senator Mark Hatfield shortly after he retired, and he was telling me just this. It is about the deals. It's about the relationships you have with people. That he helped us strategize how we were going to get additional funding for the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge. So the thing is, we're all social animals, and relationships are important to us. It's one of the primary ways that we negotiate our lives. It is these relationships that are essential to getting our lawmakers to invest federal dollars in our refuges and therefore invest in wildlife and our surrounding communities. So how do we know that this is important? Actually, studies have been done. Lawmakers are struggling with trying to make a decision, and they've got conflicting information. It's been proven that they will typically decide in favor of whoever they have a good relationship with. So if you're giving them information, you've got a good relationship with them, they're probably going to decide with you. That's the way these relationships work. Eden, could you put up the next poll? And I'm just going to test those of you who were on the last webinar. Same poll, but how much influence might a person who visits who's visited their senator? He's trying to make a decision. That visit, how much influence might it have on the final decision? Is it 56%, 73%, 94%? Ooh, I can see some of you remember from the last webinar. Okay. Have we got everybody in? Think so? And the answer is, folks, 94%. So you can see that those relationships make an incredible difference. All right. So I am going to close that out. One thing. All right. And so benefit of having a good relationship with your member of Congress is, and their staff, you really need to think about their staff, is that good relationship can provide you access to the decision maker. They're more likely to listen to you if they know and respect you, and they know whom and what you represent. If you have somebody on your board who's already got this type of relationship with your member of Congress, fantastic. This is exactly what you want. But if not, it's going to take some time to develop this relationship. Not a sprint. It's not just a one-time meeting that you have with them. This is a marathon, and you have to be persistent. So developing the relationship is also a way of developing the history. This is a give and take. You're doing things for them, and they're doing things for you. The more history you have with them, the more likely they are to really trust and respect you, and therefore do the things that you're asking them to do. Okay. So, who do you want to cultivate these relationships? Well, in the last webinar, we talked a lot about who you want to bring your ask, your issue from it. And so if you go back to the July 15th webinar, you can review all of that. Today, we want to talk about who you, okay? You have a chance of building a relationship with the legislator if they see a possible benefit that you can provide them. They are going to be thinking about who will hear about your meeting. They want to know if voters are interested in your issue and why it's important. You have to be able to demonstrate to them that you have community support. If you can show them how their support for this issue will benefit their district or state, they will want to be on your side, because that's good for their district or state is also good for their real life. Legislative chiefs of staff were surveyed to find out what constituents can do to build better relationships with members of Congress. And the number one thing they said was, show the impact of what you're advocating for, what the impact will be on the district or the state. That's the number one thing you can do. And then secondly, you need to get to know the legislative assistant who works on those issues. So those are the two main things that the chiefs of staff said. But these relationships can take many forms. The spectrum goes from impersonal to friendship. So you need to define what you want as the goal of these relationships. But no matter what form they take, it has to be with a mutual interest in a particular issue and be mutually beneficial. Goals will vary. You need to decide on what you want out of this relationship. Do you want something as simple as when you call, that legislative aide will know who you are and who you represent, and they'll take your call? Or do you want it so that, hey, it's a difficult issue, you can call your legislator and they will do as you urge them? Or it could be that you're there, you know, we want to have such a good relationship with our legislator that if he needs information on a particular issue, he's going to call our organization to get that information. You know, and you could get it all the way to, hey, maybe someday you're best buddies with that member of Congress and you can easily chat about any of the issues. Are there any questions about, I'm going to go back, about this at this point? Anything in the chat box, Eden or
Nope.
Caroline?
Nope.
Not
Okay,
yet.
I'm going to keep going. All right. So after you've had your meeting, there are some things that you really want to make sure that you capture. And so we're going to talk about that. What information you want to make sure you capture, some of the immediate follow-up you need to do, and also, hey, if you're thinking about advocacy and you're thinking about it in the long term, what do you need to be planning for? So let's say you've gone to the district office or you've gone up to Capitol Hill. You need to capture the information that you have obtained from that visit. What have you heard? What have you observed? And if you're anything like me, if I don't write it down right away, I'm not going to remember the details in 24 hours. I'm not. So I am one that needs to write it down. If you were going in and doing a Hill visit with the Refuge Association, they would ask you to fill out what you see on the screen. It's basically a login report, so that they have this information, because at the national level, this information is really important. You want to record who you met with, their contact information. If you met with a member of Congress, if you met with their staff, make sure you get their contact information. You know, how receptive were they about your issue? Did you invite them out to the refuge? What was the reaction to your ask? What additional information do you need to provide them? Did you find out anything about their interests? Did you look at the walls of their office and see that they had a lot of fish taxidermy out there? They're interested, or their bicycle was in the corner, they're interested in biking. Gather this information. Anything that you can learn, get it on this form. Just capture as much info as you possibly can. Some of the things that you need to do within a few days of your meeting are that you need to first send an email to the staffer. Thank them for their time, restate what your issue is, and provide them with an electronic version of your fact sheet. Fact sheets are only 1 or 2 pages. Hopefully you've provided them with a copy of that fact sheet even before you got to the meeting. Show the fact sheet to them as many times as possible so they understand what the issue is, what's going on. If you have some trustworthy links to organizations or provide, only give them 1 or 2 links, not a whole ton of information. But following up with this email is really important. It helps, you know, staffers say, 94% of all staffers say that this really helps them. So get this information to them. This should either come from a constituent or it comes from the person who, from your organization that facilitated that meeting. The contact person being the member of Congress's office and your organization. Also, folks, send your member of Congress, I like a handwritten note. Doesn't have to be anything terribly long, but a handwritten note, thanking them for their time, restating your issues. Mind you, these handwritten notes can take a little bit of time to get through because they have to go through irradiation and everything else. But, you know, just, you can get it to them. The other thing you really got to be careful about is if they have asked you for information, you need to get back to them in a very timely fashion. Eden, can you put up the next poll, please? And so our question to you is, what percentage of constituents get information back to their member of Congress in timely and helpful way? What percentage of constituents do that? And even I goofed and knocked myself out of the poll, so if you could let me know what the results are, I would greatly appreciate it. Your choices, I think, were 15, or, oh, I'm not even going to try to guess.
It's 15, 40, and 30.
Have we got our results in?
Yep, we're about dead even. 8 said 15, 6 said 40, 6 said 32.
Okay. Well, guys, the answer is 15%. Only 15% of constituents get back to their member of Congress with the information that that member asked for in a timely and helpful way. That's really lousy. And the end result is if you don't get back to them, they take it as you don't really have an interest in that issue. So why should they put their time into it? So it's really, really important that you do it. 40% of all constituents who go in there don't even bother to follow up at all. But you need to make that response timely and efficient. Other things to do, inform others about your visits. You know, this is where you want to go back to your board and let them know what happened. You want to let your membership know what happened. You want to let the refuge staff know what happened. And my suggestion on this would be do it in person or through a phone call, okay? Let your partners, both at the local, state, and national level, know what's happened. I know Carolyn wants to know if you've got meetings in the district or on the Hill, what happened. It helps the national organization with their legislative issues. Okay, the other thing is you want to publicize that visit. This is where you're helping the member of Congress. So, you know, you put it in your newsletters, you put it in your social media. By you sharing your visit and letting people know that you met with these folks, it helps them in their own district. This is also where, hey, you know they want to be nice to you for these visits because they don't want you reporting that their palms. They want their constituents to know that they were very helpful. Any questions about immediate follow-up to your visit? Anything in the chat box?
Yes, we have several questions. So one question from Cheryl is, it says, Joan, do you have templates of the forms you are showing that you can share with all of us?
Yes, I do, and I will be sending them to Eden after this call so she can share them with you. This recording we're thinking is going out maybe tomorrow. So those templates will be with it along with some links for you. Okay?
Excellent. And Sue says, handwritten thank you notes are important. our friends have some postcards that we can use. That's a great idea, the postcards.
Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
Kathy asks, do you have to get permission to publicize the visit?
No, you do not need to get permission. And they, members of Congress, they're going to know that this is what you're going to do. They want you to do it, especially if it's been a good visit. They want you to do it.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
actually have one more question as well. Do congressional offices have listings of assistants or staffers in their area of focus?
Yes. Caroline, you want to take that one?
Yes, they do, but it comes in the form of, it's a congressional yellow book, and it will have, like, I just randomly opened to this one woman, it will have like the legislative director is, and then it talks about what their area is, their area of expertise and their focuses, their policy issues. The problem is these subscription for this is $1,000 a year. So if you would like to know who the member staffer is, shoot me an email and I will look it up for you for free.
And if you Google enough, you can actually find it sometimes too, okay? Yeah. And you can always call their offices, both in the district and on Capitol Hill, and just ask the receptionist. And they will give you the name of the person and their contact information.
And you know what? Okay. I do that sometimes as well. I'll call up the office if it says vacant in my book or whatever. I will call up and I'll say, hey, who's working on your environmental or interior appropriations issues, and they'll just tell you who it is. So you can do that. Another thing I would add is when you have meetings, take pictures. They know if you take a picture of them, then it's going on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and they wouldn't be taking a picture with you if they didn't want it on there.
Yeah, even the staffers, take a picture with them too. Okay, so guys, advocacy, if you really want to bring up, this is a long-term effort, and Karen will tell you about it. You've got to be at it. It needs to be ongoing. You need to be in front of the lawmaker and the public all the time with your issue, because if it's not there, they're going to forget about it. They're inundated with so many things that you just sort of want to keep your issues in front of them. Advocacy is for the long term. It requires a different level of planning than your one-time meeting with your member of Congress. So you really need to assess whether or not, or what form of advocacy, how deeply you can get involved in this. What's your organizational capacity? So we're going to take a look at that and just do a quick review of what an advocacy plan might look like. So for your assessment, you need to look at a bunch of different things. You need to, first of all, make sure that you have a vision of where you want your advocacy to go. How are you going to change the world? How are you going to change your refuge? How are you going to change the community? All for the better. Do you have the necessary support that you need from your board, from your members, and from your partners, including Fish and Wildlife Service? You don't want to be going off advocating for something that they have absolutely no interest in. You know, they're your partner in this. They can't be involved in lobbying, and we talked about that in session 2, but they should be involved in your advocacy efforts. You need to be in sync. Your board needs to determine if you have the vision, support, and commitment for this advocacy. It requires persistence, a positive attitude, planning, and organization. So with advocacy, you're going to need to be constantly vigilant. We know the world is constantly changing. Therefore, the priorities for your members of Congress are constantly changing. You need to be aware that these changes and be responsive when necessary. You don't want your issue to disappear, but be patient, because change usually happens slowly and in small steps. So just keep keeping your issue in front of your lawmaker. You never know when they might react to something they've heard from you, but for sure, they're never going to react if they don't hear from you. Perseverance in this is absolutely essential. You got to be like the Energizer Bunny and just keep on going. Your efforts are going to require people, money, and time. The people like yourself in your organization that have the passion to champion your issues and to stay with it as long as it takes. You need folks that are willing to do the research, the writing, the outreach, the coordination, all the grunt work. And to be successful, you'll need continuity in this effort. It can't just be one person. If you want it to be long-term and highly powerful, you need the organization behind it. You also might need some money. You know, you may be an all-volunteer, maybe some money from media. You got to put that in the budget. You got to make the commitment to raising the money for it. You also need the time. You need someone or some folks that have the time to do this. You also need to think of the time it's going to take to get perhaps to your goal. All right, if I'm talking $900 million, annual oxygen and funding should be. Well, so that's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen next year. But if we chunk it down to something that's reasonable ask like $586 million for FY 2021, that could be doable. That's sort of time frame we're talking about. You got to write down your plan, folks. You know, planning is going to be so essential for the long term. But if you don't write it down, it's not a plan. Nobody knows about it. So make sure that as you're developing your plan, you write it down. You know, and with this, your plan needs to be realistic. As we talked in the previous slide, what sort of resources do you have to do this? You want to use those resources and push your goal a little bit beyond what those resources can do, but you don't want to make a goal that is just unobtainable. It's not going to happen. Do what you can do. And when I say plan, man, I know as a board member, that strikes fear in my heart when you talk about planning. How many months is this going to take? No. We're talking something simple here. You know, we talked about the fact sheet should only be 2 pages. Man, keep your plan simple in terms of advocacy. You've clearly specified your vision, and then you also want to set what your goals are going to be. What do you want as your goal? Is it a 5% increase in refuge system funding, or is it something simple like, I want to connect with that member of Congress twice a year? That can be a goal in front of them. There's plenty of ways to do something like that. You can invite them out to your refuge for a tour, for events. You know, you can attend their town hall meetings or get on their calls. There's lots of ways. You send them your newsletter. You send them issue papers, whatever it needs to be, but you've made a plan and you've written it down. And all the time that you're doing this, you're building that relationship with them. So remember too, your goals and objectives in this, they need to be flexible because you know things are constantly changing. As COVID-19 has proven to all of us. Carrying out your plan, like I say, is going to require getting some necessary resources, and is your board willing to do that? I also suggest you evaluate your plan. You want to make sure you have that plan out at least once a year to take a look at it and to say, did we accomplish this? What do our supporters think of this? What do we need to do to adjust and move forward? So I'm going to leave it there for planning. Are there any questions about this? And I am going to turn it over to Carmen if there are no questions.
I don't see any questions, Joan.
Okay, so I am going to stop sharing my screen.
It stopped.
Okay.
All right, everybody. So thank you, Joan. That was fabulous. We were having some audio issues, everybody. I'm really sorry that Joan was breaking up so badly. I hope that almost everything came through, though, and that you were able to figure everything out. If not, if you didn't understand one section or whatever, please reach out to Joan. I'm sure she's more than happy to answer any questions. And I am as well. So we did on June 24th, I did a policy update. That was our first webinar, and a lot of things have changed since then. And so I wanted to give a brief update here. And so I'm going to, so some of you who were on that webinar before, okay, so here we go. All right, so this is just an update. So I see, thank you, Joan, for that first poll, because there are quite a number of people on this call who weren't on the first June 24th call webinar. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail than I was planning on, but I'm not gonna rehash everything because I don't think I have the time to do that anyway. So this is just policy updates for what we talked about a couple of weeks ago at the end of June. So the issues that we discussed previously were FY21 appropriations, border wall funding, the Great American Outdoors Act, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, and the marine monuments. The marine monuments, there's been no updates to that, but the first 4 issues, we've had significant changes in what I talked about on June 24th. So what is highlighted on this slide is what is different. So just sort of some background, the fiscal year in the federal government runs October 1 to September 30th. So we are currently in the FY 2020 fiscal year. The FY 21 fiscal year starts on October 1st. So that's what we're talking about right now. Current FY 20 funding is $502 million. And for the last several years, the Refuge Association has requested $586 million. Which is high, but it's not anywhere close to what the refuge system needs anyway. And it's sort of our aspirational ask. The president's request for this next fiscal year was 525, which was actually the highest request ever for the refuge system. And what we have, the change in what happened from last time was that the House has passed their bill. They passed a number of $511 million for refuge system operations and maintenance. All these numbers are for refuge system operations and maintenance, which covers salaries and, you know, all of the maintenance work, all of the operations that you see on the refuge, on every refuge across the country. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, we have a passed bill in the House. That side is done. In addition to the small increase for refuge system O&M, we saw a restriction on oil and gas development in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is great. There's a long history to this. There was the tax bill that got passed in December of 2017, opened up the refuge for oil and gas development, and this bill would restrict that. I don't think anybody has any expectations that will survive a Senate process, but it's a good talking point and a good piece for us to build some momentum off of. The Senate, we still have no idea what's happening in the Senate. They canceled their markup in June, and we have not seen any notices of another markup, but they should perhaps be posting their bill sometime in September instead of doing a hearing to talk about their bill and to what we do call mark it up. But I would frankly not expect to see anything except a continuing resolution come October 1st. I seriously doubt that the Senate is going to be able to pass a bill, and the House and the Senate will be able to come together in what's called a conference committee and hash out all their differences and then pass a bill by October 1st. It's not going to happen. So we're going to be looking at a continuing resolution, which just continues the funding for what it currently is in FY20. It will just continue it on for however long that bill says. Typically in this kind of a situation, they'll do a continuing resolution until after the election or potentially into December. So that's the update for appropriations. Border wall funding. A bill has not passed. So the border refuge funding comes through the Homeland Security Subcommittee. Operations and maintenance for the refuge system comes through a different subcommittee. That is the Interior Department Subcommittee. So we're talking that the Interior bill has passed, but the Homeland Security bill has not passed for appropriations. And this is the same slide that I talked about back in June. There are a number of wildlife refuges bordering Mexico in South Texas at Santa Ana and Lower Rio Grande, and then there's 3 refuges in Arizona. Some of these areas have pedestrian fencing, some have vehicle barriers, some places have nothing, like the Santa Ana Refuge has nothing in South Texas, and we would like to keep it that way. Previous years, these interior and homeland, the Homeland Security bills have had restrictions on the Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge, saying that no border barrier could be built across the Santa Ana Refuge. And there was a small exclusion on portions of the Lower Rio Grande. Lower Rio Grande has, I think, 114 units. And so it's a number of those units, like it was a very small amount. All the units east of Brownsville, Texas were excluded, which was a very small portion of the refuge. The Homeland Security bill that the House has marked up out of committee and has not passed the full House yet would restrict border barriers from being built. But if there was some money that was used to build border barriers, they could not do it at Santa Ana or the entirety of the Lower Rio Grande National Wildlife Refuge. So that's what's different between now and June 24th, when I last talked about this, is the House has proposed a bill that would exclude all of the South Texas National Wildlife Refuges from any barriers, which is fabulous, fabulous news. We are thrilled about that. We have been working to get all refuges explicitly excluded. The Senate, it is unknown what they're going to be proposing, because we have not seen bills from them yet on Homeland Security either. Great American Outdoors Act. This is the big celebration, woohoo, that we have. Yesterday, the president signed the Great American Outdoors Act into law. This is law now. There are 2 huge things that will benefit refuges in this bill. First of all, it creates a pot of money for public lands backlog. Total, it's $1.9 billion. It comes from oil and gas development, and it will go towards public lands. The vast majority of the lands that are going to benefit from this backlog money are the Park Service. I think it's like 70% of the money will go to the Park Service. Bureau of Land Management also gets money, as does the Forest Service. The refuge system is going to receive 5% of that $1.9 billion, so about $95 million a year over the next 5 years. This backlog portion of that bill is only for 5 years. So it'll be about $475 million for refuges over the next 5 years. And that's done, that is ready. I have not talked to most of the regional offices since this happened, but I did talk to the refuge chief in Alaska last night, and she said that they have a list and they have sent it to headquarters, and I'm pretty sure that all the other regional offices have done this. So I think headquarters has a list of projects that are shovel ready and can be used in, get your boardwalks fixed, get your buildings fixed. We'll be able to knock out 1/3 of the backlog on the refuge system. The backlog is $1.4 billion right now, so this will put $495 million towards that, so about 1/3. So fabulous news. The other portion of the Great American Outdoors Act fully funds the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And this is dedicated funding that is off budget, which means that the $400+ million that they've been allocating every year that's been going through the Interior Subcommittee will be freed up. Whether it will go towards refuges, which would be my hope, I doubt that's going to happen. But it's a possibility, because we have all of this money freed up out of the bill now. The refuge system could double the budget. They have been getting about $60 million a year for land acquisition across the country, which they break down into various projects and various refuges. So that money should double, which is fabulous. I'm checking out the time. Another great thing that has happened is on the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. So we had a little, they almost gave me a heart attack, but we had a little blip in the House back in July. So I'll explain that in a second. So just so everybody is aware, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge is in southern Nevada. It's 1.6 million acres. It was created in 1936 for habitat for the desert bighorn sheep. And it is the largest contiguous habitat for desert bighorn sheep in the lower 48 states. and it encompasses 6 mountain ranges that run roughly parallel with movement between the mountain ranges for these sheep, which has provided a lot of really good genetic diversity over the last, 80 years that the refuge has been created. Back in the 40s, a joint use area was created. Currently, the way that it is, I think I have a map for you. Let me just click to the map. So you can see this area in the green is the desert refuge as it was created in 1936. It was created as the sheep range. So this is the refuge, and it still is the outline of the refuge. But this hash mark, this green and brown hash marked area, that is the current joint use area. It is off limits to the public. And frankly, it is off limits to the Fish and Wildlife Service as well. They have access like 2 weeks a year. It's just ridiculous. So this whole area in brown is the Nevada Test and Training Range. And this is the area that the Air Force has access to and can fly over and perform maneuvers, ground maneuvers on this area. They have mostly air access in this place. There are several strips of land totaling 112,000 acres that the Air Force has primary jurisdiction over, and they received that about 20 years ago during the last withdrawal. These withdrawals are 20 years long, so whatever comes out of this current year is what will happen in the desert refuge for the next 20 years. This red part is what they had proposed, the administration had proposed, to take extra land. So I'm not gonna, there's tons of details. I could talk all day about the desert refuge. But the Senate passed a bill with status quo language. What that means is this hash marked area, everything would stay the same. The Senate has passed it, the House has passed a bill where the land, the hash mark land will stay the same, but there is additional access for tribes, for hunters, and for the Fish and Wildlife Service. So the House bill and the Senate bill have the same jurisdictional language in there, but the House has additional language that allows, it's slightly better, it allows more access. We are pretty happy about this. The House gave me a heart attack in July, like I mentioned, because they approved an amendment from Rob Bishop that gave this entire hash mark area to the Air Force. And I can't even tell you, I was just beside myself. Big mistake, they did not mean to do it. It was a big problem. They thought they were voting on a different bill, and they actually gave away half the refuge unintentionally. So we're looking at conference committee. So the House and the Senate, the desert bill has gone through a much larger bill called the National Defense Authorization Act. It has been attached to that bill. The National Defense Authorization Act, the Senate bill and the House bill are wildly different. So they're going to have to go through what's called a conference committee. And this committee is the key. There are members of Congress who would love nothing more than to let the Air Force have this refuge. And so we are going to have to be really, really diligent and make sure that we keep our voices loud to dissuade them from doing this. We want either the Senate or the House bill to pass. We don't care which it is, frankly, because I was actually surprised that we didn't lose some land during this process. But I would rather have the House bill with some technical changes, but conference committee is the key. So we will be putting out action alerts and putting out more information from the Refuge Association into the fall on this issue, because given what happened in the House, we need to be really, really loud and make sure that we let them know that we need to keep this refuge a refuge. This is the last piece that I had talked about. Nothing much has changed on this. I did just want to do a quick update, just so everybody knows there are 5 marine national monuments, 1 in the Atlantic and 4 in the Pacific Ocean, and they total 759 million acres of marine habitat in the refuge system, and the refuge system is 850 million acres total. So this is the vast majority of the refuge system acreage. The Northeast Canyons and Seamounts, like I said, is the only one in the Atlantic Ocean. And then the 4 Pacific monuments, 2 of them could be at risk for executive action. Pacific Remote Islands and Rose Atoll. It's a very long story. If you're interested, I will be glad to jump on the phone with you. But PRI, Pacific Remote Islands, and Rose Atoll are at risk for being either reduced in size or to have them open for commercial fishing. We don't have any news on this. We are still concerned that the administration could do this. However, we haven't seen that happen. The Northeast Canyons and Seamounts, early June, the president signed a proclamation saying that the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts in the Atlantic Ocean would be open for commercial fishing. Several conservation groups have filed a lawsuit on this, and we expect to file an amicus brief in the case, but we're not looking for that probably until early to mid-fall. I don't believe that the administration has answered the original complaint yet, so that's what we're looking at for Northeast Canyons and Seamounts and the Pacific Monuments as well. Next, the only thing that's really happening right now in Congress is COVID legislation. I'm sure that everybody's seen this in the news, that they are, currently fighting over this legislation. The House should be in recess now. If they had followed their original calendar, the House would already be in their August recess, and the Senate was scheduled to go out next week. They have not gone into recess yet, and they are supposed to be out until September 8th, which is the day after Labor Day. So why am I telling you this? Because this is a great time for you to go do meetings with your members of Congress and your senators. Invite them out to your refuge. See if you can meet a staffer out at the refuge or meet your member of Congress or your senator. This is, August recess is a fantastic time to do Hill meetings and to do district meetings. I haven't done a Hill meeting in person since the beginning of March. So they're just not doing meetings in person up here. So I don't know what the district offices are doing, but if you can invite some of these folks out to your refuge during August, you can be socially distanced, you can wear masks, you can be safe on these refuge areas and really show them what these refuges look like. This is a great time to do that. All right, so what is up next? So this was our third webinar in our summer series, but I did want to let folks know that we are starting a quarterly Friends call to provide updates. We were talking about doing a call, but I think it's probably going to be a similar format to this. So we're going to be starting to do this in September, will be our first quarterly Friends call. So it's probably going to be a September, December, March, June timeframe. We have been doing our summer series at 2 p.m. and we wanted to ask if this time works for everybody. I know a lot of people are working or people are retired or you're doing other stuff during the day. So Eden, would you mind putting up the poll? So we're asking, what is the best time for you to do these Refuge Friends quarterly calls? 2, 5, or 7 p.m. Eastern? These are Eastern time. Okay, so the 2 p.m. seems to work. Okay. All right, that's super helpful. All right, so it seems like the 2 p.m. is not a bad time for folks. All right, we might stick with this time, frankly, because I know that, if you have kids or, sometimes 7 and 5 are infringing on dinner time and things like that. So we'll probably keep it at 2. Okay, thank you. That's awesome. All right. Also, if you have any ideas for future webinars like this one that are outside the quarterly calls, where those are just going to be Hill updates. That's not going to be things like the stuff that Joan was touching on and was really talking about, which was Hill meetings and how to do them and topics, all that stuff. So if you have any ideas for future webinars, ones that the Refuge Association have done in the past is really like board development and, things like that. So, please let us know in the comments if you have any ideas. And also, what information can we offer that would be helpful for friends? We definitely want to give you the content that you really need and that your friends group needs. So I will stop my screen sharing and see if there's any questions. All right, Joan, have you seen any? Okay, so I've got a question from Barbara. Do you want me to go back to that, Barbara? Hold on, you're not gonna be able to tell me. Hold on. So Barbara was asking about the desert map. Let me see if I can go back to that. Barbara, what I was saying was this red area was the area that the administration was trying to give away to the Air Force. They were trying to take these areas from primary Fish and Wildlife Service jurisdiction and give them to the Air Force. So this area was going to be under Air Force jurisdiction, primary jurisdiction. So the only areas that would be really part of the wildlife refuge would just be the area in this green. So you would take this whole area, which is 1.6 million acres, and you would take it down to 500,000 acres, which is this area. And the other problem with this is there is a road that runs up through the refuge like this. It's called the Alamo Road. And it is the only through road through the refuge. And a lot of locals take this road. If you want to get into the refuge and really recreate or go see anything, you have to take the Alamo Road. So if this had happened, the refuge would have been cut into just 500,000 acres, and it would have been basically off limits. Don't seem to know how to stop my screen share. Okay. All right, Joan, any other questions on here? I haven't been looking through them.
There is one. If you had one thing for us to talk about with Congress staff, what would it be?
Money, appropriations. That is the biggest problem facing the refuge system right now. So I was saying that we're currently at $502 million for refuge operations and maintenance. What the refuge system, we have been saying for, like 11 years now, that the refuge system needs 900 million for full funding. And frankly, that's a low ball figure anyway. 900 million is, the Park Service, and granted, I understand that parks are different, they have more infrastructure, but the parks are funded at $2.5 billion a year. And the refuge system is $502 million. So it's a huge disparity. Yes, the parks have, they've got bridges and buildings, but they have thousands and thousands and thousands of staff, and just so much more ability to reach people, to do, just the refuge system is so unbelievably underfunded. I had said a few minutes ago that I was talking to the refuge chief in Alaska, and she was talking about all these positions that haven't been filled. And that's nationwide. There are refuges all over the country that, sometimes it takes 1.5 years to fill a position. And a lot of that is just, bureaucracy, it's HR, but a lot of it is funding. You lose a position and you don't get it back for 3 years. It's just, funding absolutely is the by far the biggest issue that we need Friends to advocate for.
And Caroline, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, so, and actually when you're talking about these things, it's really important for you to try to bring it down to the local level.
Absolutely.
What's the impact on your refuge? What's the impact on your community? Can they get out there and recreate? Do they have access? These are the things that your members of Congress really want to know. What's the impact on their district? What's the impact on their state?
Yep. You can say things like, 10 years ago, we had an environmental education staffer at the refuge, and, they were seeing all these school kids, and it was all fourth graders, whatever the actual reality is at your refuge. And, we lost our staffer 7 years ago, and we have no environmental education program anymore. Or, we have volunteers out mowing the meadows, or because there's no staff to do it, just whatever. It is absolutely critical that you bring it down to your local level, because frankly, a lot of these members, they don't care if the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge has oil and gas drilling, because that's not their issue. They care about your refuge. They care about the refuge in their district.
I have another question, Caroline.
Yep.
It's how do we approach building relationship with our congressmen whenever we are diametrically opposed politically?
You can always see common ground on the benefits of that refuge on the ground. I'm thinking of one example. So Jeff Duncan is a congressman from South Carolina, and I worked with him quite a bit when I worked at Ducks Unlimited, because he's a big Ducks Unlimited supporter. And, we would talk about, funding for refuges, because he actually cared about these areas as good hunting locations. You know, a lot of people, if they can't afford to have a hunting lease on somebody else's land, I mean, these are public lands. These are free for people to go and hunt on. So, you know, just you have to figure out what these members are interested in, what they care about. You know, if they're big NRA people and they care about hunting, you can focus on that part of it. If you're a big hunter and you're an NRA member and they're, you know, these, you know, crazy lefties, then you can talk about, you know, well, these are good for climate change. And, you know, you just need to, you need to put all the political stuff aside and really focus on that one thing that you can agree on, which is why this refuge is important. And this is the benefit of the refuge system, is it offers something for everybody. I don't want to go on too long because I think we're out of time, but are there any other questions, Eden?
Not that I see right now, but if any of you guys have any last minute questions, we can take one or two more.
All right, so yeah, I see something from Sue. More topics about fundraising tips for friends with time for Q&A, for a topic for future webinars. I think the fundraising is going to be a big piece. May we have the file for this presentation? Yes. Eden will be sending that out. Yeah, I think we've been sending out the presentations in the follow-up emails, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, excellent.
And then also those forms that Jen had been presenting during her presentation and a few other resources as well.
Yep. And I just got a question, are the other webinars accessible? And the answer is yes, they were all recorded and they're all accessible. Eden, are the links to those going to be included in the follow-up email as well?
Yeah, so the follow-up email tomorrow, since the last webinar, I'm also going to be including the prior to recordings as well. So it's all kind of compiled in one large follow-up.
Great. So I just had a question. So from Jan, specific dates for the Friends updates. I'm assuming you're talking about the quarterly call. So I'm thinking that we're probably going to be doing it the second or third week of second or third full week. So the week of the 14th or the 21st. So potentially like the 16th or the 23rd. But we haven't decided on a date yet. But everybody who signed up for this webinar, we will absolutely email you and let you know when that's going to be and all that. So. All right, so we are 3 minutes past and the questions have slowed down to a standstill. So thank you everybody for coming with us on this journey. This has been great to be able to talk to everybody, and I'm going to unmute. Can I unmute everybody?
Yeah, I can do that real quick, I believe. See if I can.
I see a mute all, but I don't see unmute all.
Okay, it should have unmuted everyone, but if you were previously muted, you'll still stay muted type of thing, so.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. And, you know,
thank you.
I think everybody here has my email and Joan's email. We'll include that in the follow-up. Please shoot us an email if you have any questions about any of this stuff. You know, like I said, I can talk about this stuff all day long. Me and Joan are like, yes, you can.
Love. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.